Hey everyone, welcome to the sixth episode of Committed Critics, a pop culture podcast where we're not just committed to our opinions, but also each other.
Aww.
Aww. My name's Kevin Lau,
And I'm Ryan Davis.
and today we are going to talk about something that most pop culture podcasts don't really talk about, and that is literature.
Gasp.
Who reads anymore these days? What is
I
this?
know.
1890?
I know. Everything is just fed into my brain now through a screen.
Exactly. No one has to read unless it's social media. So, Ryan, we're going to start off talking about our individual books that we've been reading the past few weeks, maybe in the past month, because I missed out on an episode as well.
Yeah.
What have you been reading lately?
Well, I finished Doomsday Clock. It's the DC Watchmen crossover event that kind of, blew everything up. It was okay. I won't give it a big thumbs up or big thumbs down, but it was okay. I just started reading the second book to the Mistborn series, which we're going to also talk about a little bit later on in this show.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's pretty much it. Everything else has been pretty much just straight comics. I'm reading Flash, I'm reading Justice League, and I'm reading the Deceased. They just released the spinoff where it deals with like some of the villains and
Right.
how they dealt with the zombie apocalypse in the DC universe. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's pretty much it.
Nice. We will be talking about Doomsday Clock next episode. I just finished the second issue not too long ago. I will try to plow through it and have it ready, but have it done by the next episode so we can go spoiler talk in front of Zach.
Cool.
And then maybe we can like compare it to the Watchmen show too, because
Yeah.
basically that timeline splits, right? Like,
Yeah, basically, because Watchmen deals with it. They're both sequels to the original Watchmen comic, but one kind of splits off and merges with the DC universe, and then one kind of maintains its own universe.
mm-hmm,
So it's interesting to see how they do it because it's like I know with the Watchmen show, and also it was kind of a joke in the comics. I believe it was Robert Redford becomes president,
mm-hmm,
and that's one of the things in Doomsday Clock that they also have in the Watchmen show. So things like that do overlap, but then they also split apart.
right.
So I thought it was pretty interesting.
Yeah. So I haven't seen any of the HBO show, but but two issues so far into Doomsday Clock. I have to say, like the first issue was kind of rough, but the second
Yeah,
issue is kind of interesting.
it,
Um,
it, it has that.
yeah, yeah. First impressions, I'm like, okay, I'm interested to see where it's going. It's not uh, the statements it makes at the time of its release probably wasn't that interesting as it is now. But
Hmm.
that's something like we will talk about in the next episode. That's a whole conversation.
Yeah, it really is.
As for me, during this pandemic, I've been staying with my family and I've been reading one of my brother's books every now and then. So we just finished the Alcatraz versus the Evil Librarian series by Brandon Sanderson, who also wrote the Mistborn series.
Hmm.
It's fantastic, I gotta say, for a middle grade fantasy. It's so Brandon Sanderson usually writes epic fantasy for adults, and so they're usually pretty serious. Like it's a
Right.
serious world. If there's going to be any jokes, it's going to be like through the characters.
Hmm.
Alcatraz versus the Evil Librarians, nothing is taken seriously except for the character arcs. Uh, but so like when the character arcs, those beats for the character arcs hit, they hit hard. And and it's the way Brandon writes it is so well done. Because it's like the whole world is so wacky. It's funny. For those of you who don't know, the magic system is where, the story is about this kid who breaks things on accident, but then he discovers that the ability to break things like that is actually his superpower. And so he finds like the rest of his family that also has similar powers. Like his grandfather is always late to everything. One of his cousins trips at random moments. Another one of his cousins just really bad at math. But
These these sound like very useful but also inconvenient powers.
right, exactly. But the thing is, so his grandfather that's always late to everything, he arrives when he's in a fight. He arrives late to his own death. So when someone tries to shoot him, they shoot where he's going to be in like 2 seconds later than what he actually is. Well, yeah, 2 seconds earlier. I mean, so he arrives 2 seconds late to where the bullet hits.
Okay, that's pretty good.
Yeah, and then the cousin who's really bad at math, basically like when she adds something up, she's like, oh, like say there's only 2 items of one thing, something in the area. Then she's like, oh, but my math says that there's 4 things, and then and suddenly now there's 4 things of 4 of that thing, which is kind of OP.
What?
It's really crazy, but basically it's about this kid, just Alcatraz Smedry, 13 years old, accidentally becoming like a hero of the world, and then he's writing these books, these autobiographies, to show everyone, it's like, look, like you think of me as the hero of the world, but I actually ruined everything. I am not a good person. That is why I'm writing these autobiographies, to show you that even though you think I'm a hero, I am actually one of the worst people you will ever meet. And like that kind of pays off in the last book, where like it's the secret. It's the last book is basically the adventure that the world doesn't know about, that he's revealing to the whole world of what he did, and it's just, dude, it's great. I want to talk spoilers about it, but I can't.
Fun fact: I did read I read some of the first book back in like I think it was middle school or high school, but I never finished it. Because at that time, I also started reading the Aragon series, which I also didn't. I only finished the first book of that, and then I watched the movie, and I put down everything.
You mean it's just A New Hope, but with dragons?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, that's literally what it is. I was kind of like, this is okay. I mean, it wasn't the greatest thing, but I mean, I stopped reading Alcatraz, and I just never went back to it. I never finished the series, and I feel bad about that.
I'm going to tell you right now is the best time to start reading the series, because next year there is a surprise coming.
Oh, snap. Okay. So what would you rate the series then, like overall?
Overall, so the books 1, 2, and 4, I give a 4 out of 5. Books 3 and 5, I give a 5 out of 5.
Okay. Oh. Wow.
Yeah. So it's around like a 4.5 out of 5 in total, somewhere around there. It's I wouldn't call it a must read series, because it has a lot of it plays a lot with the functions and forms of creative writing that a lot of people don't usually like, where it breaks the fourth wall and interacts with the reader. If you read just for escapism, probably not the best choice. For me personally, I love how it engages the reader and become part of the story, essentially. And I recommend reading it either ebook or physical form. The audiobook does not do it justice. There's a lot of jokes and like secrets in the books, in the text, that you just will totally miss in the audiobooks.
I prefer reading physical books anyway, and I barely read ebooks. Mostly anything I read ebooks is comics.
But another book, a book I'm currently reading right now, I'm halfway done with it, is Magnus Chase, Book 2, Hammer of Thor. I don't like it. I'm only reading it because my sister wants me to read it, and that's it.
I'll say I'm a huge fan of the Percy Jackson series. I've read everything except The Trials of Apollo, because every single person who's told me about it has said it's dirt garbage, including you.
It is garbage. It is 100% straight garbage.
Yeah, so I never bothered to read it. I have the first book. You gave me the first book because you didn't want it anymore.
I was about to say, like, I wonder where my first book went. Then I remember, like, now that you mentioned it, like, yeah, I did give it to Ryan.
Yeah, and it's been sitting on my shelf, and I'm looking at it like, do I really want to read this? And I'm like, I don't know if I want to put myself through that pain, because everyone has just said, every single one of my Percy Jackson friends who have been fans of it since like middle school have all said this was dirt garbage. And as someone who just recently finished reading the Percy Jackson series, I think back in like May, it was back in May, I was kind of like, I don't want to put myself through that pain.
Right.
So,
eventually I will get Trials of Apollo through the library and just kind of skim through it, because they're really short too.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just like, but it would be only just to see like, how does the universe continue? Not so much as like, I like the characters or anything.
Oh, definitely.
I know one of the main character dies in book 3 apparently.
Yeah, I know who it is, and it pissed me off.
Yeah, because like knowing how Trials of Apollo is also written, I'm like, I don't think that character got the death they deserved.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Because like, I mean, he's a huge character in the Heroes of Olympus series, and
Hmm.
from what I hear, like his death isn't even like it is not even justice.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, so I'm like, I'm not
But
gonna bother with it.
but as for Magnus Chase, like so the first book, Sword of Summer, was
Mm-hmm.
kind of it starts off really good. The first few chapters are really interesting because it's like, what if Percy Jackson was a jerk and swore and didn't care about people?
Yeah.
But then like you get to the point where it starts blending in Norse mythology with the real world, and
Mm-hmm.
that's when the book stops being good.
Yeah, I'll say I enjoy. I made a description of how I felt about each book. It was like Percy Jackson was kind of like you took the Greek gods. It made sense. They weren't exactly chaotic, but it
Hmm.
was kind of order to it. Like it had a sense of like order and style, and you knew how the world worked. You got to the
Hmm.
Egyptian series, and they added more magic to it. The Kane Chronicles, they added more magic to it. It was less about working alongside the Greek gods, and like the characters can be possessed by them, use their powers, everything like that. So they're not the children of the Egyptian gods; they're more of the vessels for them.
Hmm.
And then you get to Magnus Chase, and it's just pure chaos. Like
Right.
it just. I mean, I started busting out laughing as soon as I heard there's a giant squirrel in the tree that'll kill you if you try to climb the royal tree,
Right, and it just
and I
keeps
was just like,
saying insults. But like, yeah,
yeah,
like the world of like Magnus Chase is pure chaos because like the way so Magnus Chase is a series about Norse mythology. The Magnus Chase, the main character, discovers he is the son of Frey, the god of peace and tranquility, something like that.
mm-hmm,
It's not important, so
yeah,
unfortunately. But basically, like he dies. Magnus Chase dies, and then he
which is a
gets
plot twist.
early in the book.
I mean, it's something you don't expect from given how the other series went.
Definitely. But then but then he dies in a quote unquote heroic manner, and then gets picked up by a Valkyrie to become a member of the Hotel Valhalla. To where he will be living his days out post death, training for Ragnarok. But then he also has to go to the real world a couple times to save the world for something. Yay!
And if they die
He
in the real
Magnus.
world, he dies again, but doesn't come back.
Yep. But this makes it sound like that Magnus Chase would make choices, but he doesn't. Uh, he is a very passive protagonist. Especially even like that time where he does like the moment for his death, where he's like where he dies heroically. He
Hmm.
doesn't actively make that choice because he literally says in the narration, "It's like I don't know what came over me, but I started walking forward." And I was like, "Oh, okay, why?"
Because his main character's got a main character.
He has the main character, but also like the way the match it works is like so as long as you die a heroic death, you get picked up by a Valkyrie and then you taken to Hotel Valhalla. So what my thinking it was my whole time reading Magnus Chase Sword of Summer, it was like, so are any other like half bloods in here or demigods? Like, are we gonna see some characters that died in like other Percy Jackson books at
That's
all?
what I guess since
The
because they
answer is
try to
no.
yeah you don't they try to explain it as like each world has their own different kind of afterlife or whatever. So it's like yeah, I mean we've seen three different afterlives now because we have Hotel Valhalla, we've
Hmm.
seen the underworld from the Percy Jackson series, and we've seen I can't remember what they call it in the Egyptian series, but basically like the realm of Osiris and Anubis,
Right.
basically like where all the land of the dead is. So we've seen it
Hmm.
there. It's just yeah, it's like okay, so they're technically they died heroically, but they don't get to go to Hotel Valhalla, I guess, because they're not related to
Well,
the
there,
Norse people.
there are characters in the Hotel Valhalla that are not related to the Norse gods.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, I guess if you have Greek deity blood, if you're technically a demigod, I guess, because as they explain it in Percy Jackson, Greek gods technically don't have DNA.
Hmm.
So I guess in a way they're only having one person's DNA. So maybe that's it. I don't know. what the rules are. And
Man,
let's call him Rick Riordan. How do you explain this?
his answer will probably, good question. I don't care.
Yeah, he
Because it
probably.
kind of seems like
I mean, it was made for middle schoolers at the time, and now, everyone who was in middle school is now an adult and still reading these, and they're like, wait a minute.
right. Well, it's just like it doesn't age with the audience at all.
Yeah,
He like he bumps it up a little bit with Heroes of Olympus to like 15-year-olds. Then he kind of just stays there. And
yeah,
then Trials of Apollo, he goes backwards.
yeah. Because like the beauty I liked about reading the Percy Jackson series was that Percy aged as the books went along. Because the whole thing was about him reaching 16. So you see him start at 12, and you see as he like develops in each book, and he becomes more of a hero. And like, I love reading that fifth book because that's when you see him like they all. There's one moment where it's like they all look at him and it's like, yeah, you're the leader here. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and they've accepted him as a leader, even though, okay, why is Percy the leader? Just because he's been on a couple different quests? I was like, yeah, it's pretty much it.
Right. Yeah. So I've started reading The Lightning Thief to my brother after
Mm-hmm.
we finished the Alcatraz series. So we're about 4 chapters in right
Yeah.
now, where he just entered Camp Half Blood.
Mm-hmm.
But it's so reading it now. This is my third time reading it. Last time I read it was like a few years ago. Lightning Thief feels like an odd entry compared to everything that follows after it, because if you're expecting something serious, it's kind of on the comedy side. But if you're
Yeah.
expecting a comedy, it's more on the serious side. It's a weird like middle ground in the tone.
It blends them.
Yeah, but then like as the series goes on, it gets more into comedy, except for like obviously the darker moments
Mm-hmm.
where it starts this gets really serious now. But it's like you said, where like the world makes sense. Like there is order to the world.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Like,
like really the most like obviously the world has comedic moments where it blends in with our current modern day pop culture,
mm-hmm.
but most of the humor comes from the characters.
Yeah, which I like because it's like moments where it's like Percy just like he's facing this monster and he just starts screaming his head off. Or if
Mm-hmm.
it's like I remember one of my favorite moments is when he's describing the difference between a dragon and a draken. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, a dragon has wings, a draken doesn't. But a dragon can turn you to stone, but not like the Medusa kind of stone, the kind of, oh my god, the snake is about to bite my head off kind of stone. And I'm like,
Yeah.
that's a funny joke. Like that explains the world well, while also making it kind of funny because it's like if you saw that in real life, yeah, you'd freak out.
Mm-hmm. And then also with like the Percy Jackson series, like the way the characters are written, it's like, it is a great, it engages the reader because Percy refers to the reader often.
Mm-hmm.
But also it's like, it's like, it's a nice form of escapism for middle schoolers. So you'd be like, you're going on adventures with your friends kind of escapism.
Yeah.
But going back to Magnus Chase, so like, like I said, like it starts off interesting where it's like, what if Percy Jackson was a jerk that didn't care about anyone? And then he finds out he's the son of the god of peace. So basically it sets up an idea like, oh, what if this jerk that doesn't care about anyone and wants to start fights has to learn to fulfill the role of a peacekeeper.
And in a world where most of their entire culture is based around war and conflict.
Exactly. But, halfway through book 2 of a 3-book series, Magnus Chase, it is quickly revealed that like, oh, Magnus Chase isn't angry, he doesn't hate people, he's just a sad boy whose mom gets killed by wolves, and now he hates wolves. By the way, did we mention wolves? We're gonna keep mentioning it every 5 pages. So, but basically, yeah, like he doesn't make any active choices. He's not really put into the role of a peacekeeper. He still has to fight a lot.
Yeah.
He's just bad at fighting.
I also
He has a
don't.
magic sword that does things for him. But like the sword is one of the best characters so
The
far.
sword is one of the best characters, but I also hate that it literally does do everything for him.
Right.
Like he's like, hey, do this, and it's like, oh yeah, the only thing you'll have to worry about is when you grab me again, you'll be tired, and I'm like, that's it. Like
Yeah. Like Magnus Chase is so uninteresting because has no dramatic conflict going on either. He doesn't
yeah,
change at all. He just kind of stays the same.
this is slightly spoilers, but like getting to the last book, I will say, in terms of like finality, like the final conflict,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't feel as epic. Like I'll say, like okay, Percy Jackson, the first series, that entire conflict, that entire war at the end is phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
Having to fight throughout all of New York, each different wave of enemy come in. You see different monsters. It's great. You even has callbacks to the first book when the Minotaur shows up and Percy has to face him again.
Right. It's a nice slow burn that not only has Percy reflect on his previous entries, on previous adventures, but also like forces him to change to achieve his goal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's like it's interesting because like at the very end, slight spoilers for anyone who hasn't read the books, but if you haven't at this point, I pity you.
Right.
They reveal at the end like Percy is not the hero. He's not he's supposed to be the hero of the story, and it's revealed who the real hero is, and it's like I like that twist. It was like, yeah, it's like we've been following Percy this entire time, but he's not the one meant to save the world. In fact, if he takes action, he could actually be the one to destroy it. And I was like, that's an interesting twist. The Kane Chronicles, still a great finale. I was held on the entire way. Heroes of Olympus, I will say, kind of dipped down after the fourth book because
the fifth book of Heroes of Olympus was kind of like, you can tell that's when Rick Riordan started clocking out.
Yeah. It was like the fourth book was phenomenal because Percy and Annabeth having to suffer and was literally hell. I'm like, but
it was really good.
Yeah, and then the fifth book was kind of like anticlimactic, and I was like, oh, well, that was cool.
Well, at least it's over.
But then you get to Magnus Chase, and I was like, at the end of that book, I was like, okay, all the characters kind of just go on. I'll let you finish it so you can make your own judgments, but
yeah,
I kind of left it like, okay, well, I finished that. I'm like, it was cool. It was another Rick Riordan book. I was happy to finish something of Rick Riordan's again.
Mm-hmm.
I will say the only connection I really liked to the Percy Jackson series, because the third book does have a little bit crossover, because I'm not sure, I think you've read in the first book, but Magnus Chase is the cousin of Annabeth,
right,
who's Percy's girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
So they do have they do have a little bit of a crossover connection in the third book.
Got to bring Percy in for the cash.
Yeah, so it's like, hey, Percy's gonna show up for a bit.
That's what he did with Trials of Apollo. Percy shows up for the little bit in the beginning, then he kind of leaves.
Yeah, they have in Kane Chronicles, two of the characters from the Heroes of Olympus series show up.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's
I haven't read. I only read half of the Red Pyramid, and I didn't care for it.
Yeah, it's in the second or third book. I know one of the Kane siblings meets two of the girls from the Aphrodite cabin at her high school, because they describe both. They tell them both their names. One of them is Piper, who's one of the main characters in Heroes of Olympus, and the other one's like kind of her rival in the Aphrodite cabin.
Oh,
so they both show up, and then they also have like different teases of the Percy Jackson series. Like at one point, Carter looks out into the Manhattan skyline, and he's like, "I swear I must be hallucinating or something, because I swear I saw a flying horse over Manhattan." And I was like, "Ha ha ha!"
Right. Well, they have 3 crossover short stories with Kane Chronicles. One's like Carter meets Percy, Sadie meets Annabeth, and then like the third one is all of them together.
Mm-hmm. Which everyone was like, we want a bigger thing.
I just don't remember what happens in them.
Yeah, because they're very short stories, and they're kind of like, hey, this monster showed up, we fought it, we beat it. Hey, my name's Percy, my name's Carter, good on you.
Hey, fan fiction.
Yeah, but literally that's what it was. It was just fan fiction. That's the perfect way to sum it up. I'm pretty sure there's more fan fiction out there than there is of the actual 3 short stories.
Oh, there was a lot. I haven't read any of them. I just kind of glanced at them. I was like, oh, there's a lot. I wish they had proper grammar.
Yeah, I went to one Rick Riordan book signing, and all I remember from that is a couple of girls standing out there like, after this is when Heroes of Olympus was releasing House of Hades, so the 4th book.
Oh, but you went to a Rick Riordan book signing?
Yes.
Nice.
It was. Yeah, I've been to 2 of his book signings. When he first started the Heroes of Olympus, and then when he was doing the 4th book of Heroes of Olympus, because he came to St. Louis. But
oh yeah, you live in like a major city.
Yeah, so he tends to stop by occasionally. But yeah, when he came by, like there was a group of girls like, it's like if he doesn't finish, if he stops writing after this, I'm just gonna kidnap him and force him to write more. And I'm like, whoa. I was like, I thought I was
Whoa,
a
calm
fan,
down.
but okay. So I realized there are actual crazy
No,
fans out
there
there.
are rabid Percy Jackson fans that will
Yeah,
eat up all of his books. I'm not one of them. I
same.
got yeah. I was like I read them until it's like, oh, this is starting to get bad, and then I just stop.
Yeah,
Like
I'll at
his
least.
adult novels that he wrote before Percy Jackson, they're
Hmm.
pretty bad.
Okay, yeah, I enjoy them, but I'm like, I recognize when something's bad. I'll
Hmm.
finish it, but I recognize if it's bad.
Right. It's just like, I have too many books to read to spend it reading a book that's bad.
Yeah.
Anyways, moving on. Let's talk about Mistborn for a bit.
Yes.
So Ryan and I accidentally read Mistborn around the same time. Uh, so that's something that happened. But we're gonna say that we committed each other. We were committed to each other to finishing
Yes.
it, and it's totally like a book club moment. So Ryan, I'm gonna start with you. What were your thoughts on Mistborn Book One by Brandon Sanderson?
So I got Mistborn from one of my old teachers, and I was like, "Oh, let me finish actually read this," because I read it a little bit in high school, and
Mm-hmm.
then again I stopped because Heroes of Olympus. We'll backtrack to that, but yeah. So I read Mistborn finally, and I enjoyed it very much. The characters are all very interesting. I love a good heist story because that's kind of what it is. It's a war with a heist,
Mm-hmm.
and it focuses more on the heist than it does on the war, which I appreciated.
Mm-hmm.
And just reading it like kept me hooked. Like I kept reading it because usually when I start reading books, sometimes it takes me a second to get into it. But with this, I was pretty much hooked from like about 3 chapters in. I enjoy the characters. I enjoyed the power system they have in it. I guess it's powers, magic, whatever you want to kind of call it. It has kind of a science element, I guess you could say to it.
Right. It's technically magic
Yeah,
because it's like some people can do it, some people can't. Don't worry
it's
about it.
magic, but you also like they're not making up their own elements, which I thought was interesting. Like I think they only make up is adium even a real element, like a real metal?
I don't know. I would have to look that
Yeah,
up. I'm gonna assume it's a real
yeah,
metal.
because I'm like everything else was real, so I was like, okay.
Hmm.
Mm,
But yeah, basically the way the magic system works is where these people called mistings or mistborns can burn certain. They eat metal by like they shave into flakes and like
mm-hmm.
swallow it, and then it's in their stomach. They can burn certain types of metal to get certain powers. So one of them would turn them into a magnet. One of them turns them into basically they can push metals instead of pull.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is being able to see to the future for a few seconds, getting stronger. All is a whole
Yeah,
variety of powers that they can do, and it's limited by how much of a certain metal they have in their
and
reserves.
each metal burns differently, so some of them can last a long time, and others of them just expend really quickly.
Exactly. So this is what is called a hard magic system, where there are hard rules to how the magic works, and its limitations, and it creates magic as a form of tool instead of a form of spectacle,
Mm-hmm.
where the characters have to figure out how to use the magic to help achieve their goal,
Yeah.
and how they have to like think outside the
Because like one
box.
of the elements I like is so with the pulling and pushing abilities, you can't push or pull like you can't push more than your own weight. So like if say you're pushing against a wall, you'll fly away from the wall, which can help either that can help getting away from someone, or it could be your downfall if you say you're pushing against someone who's stronger than you, because other people have these powers.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like the whole like pulling system. Don't pull anything small like that weighs less than you, otherwise it's gonna come straight at
Mm.
you. Which can be good if you're trying to
Right.
like, hey, I'm trying to grab this sword from you. But it can also be bad if, say, you're trying to pull, I don't know,
Like literally a
right,
coin, like because it's going to fly at you at like a velocity of being launched by your own
right,
weight. So that's just
go
going to
through
like
you.
go through you. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like,
But they use coins to like they throw coins in the air to and push them as a weapon, or also the way like you mentioned, like so if they push a coin onto the ground, and the coin when the coin hits the ground, it starts pushing the person up,
mm-hmm,
and that's how they travel around. So which is really cool.
right,
Going into the plot a bit, so it takes place in a high fantasy setting. It kind of modernizes the high fantasy genre, which is the reason why I read it.
mm-hmm,
Because I'm currently writing a novel where I want to modernize high fantasy to where it's more accessible to modern day
mm-hmm,
readers. Like everything is in plain American English, no these or thous or
Yeah.
anything like that, unless it's like as a joke. And then, but also meshes together with another genre. Whereas my novel, where it's like I'm meshing high fantasy with hard boiled detective fiction.
Okay.
This one, what Mistborn does is like it's Ocean's 11 but high fantasy setting,
Exactly how I
which
described
is
it.
really cool. It doesn't quite mesh the two plot lines as much as I would like. It does, like they're a little more isolated than I feel like he could have
By the
done.
two plot
But
lines,
it's
do you
still
mean
really good.
by the two plot lines? Do you mean like Kelsier and Vin stories, or
So it's like, so you have like the whole thing where it's like, oh, we gotta take down the emperor. That's one plot
right?
line, and then it's like, oh, we also have this heist thing going on.
Oh,
So it's kind of they feel kind of separated a little
yeah.
bit. It's not as intertwined as I would like.
At the end, they
Um,
kind of intertwine, but like I get what you mean. Like they don't focus really.
Right. It all builds up to a fantastic
Right.
ending. So it all works out. So, but it's just kind of like, as I was reading, it's like, oh, this feels a little like isolated.
Yeah.
But yeah, but it is essentially like, A New Hope, but with a different style to
Yeah.
it. A New Hope type
And
story.
what I was gonna say, like with that whole different diverging plot lines, I will say like I was more invested in the heist part of it than I was the
Mhm.
actual like we got to take down the Lord Ruler part, which they didn't really address until they started getting closer to the end. But the end somehow,
Right.
but the end picks it back up real fast because they realize,
It picks up real fast, real
yeah,
high.
like it's like, oh, we're losing for a second. Oh no, we're going. I'm like, oh, we're going.
Yeah. Yeah, instead of starting the heist in the middle of the story, it started like towards the end. I'm like, all right, they're playing a long con, so like it's still really interesting from the get go. So it follows the story of Vin, who is a 16-year-old street urchin, who comes across this guy Kelsier, who leads a thieving crew, and so Vin learns that she is a Mistborn. It can control the difference between a Misting and a Mistborn is that a Misting can only burn one type of metal. A Mistborn can burn all kinds of metals. And Mistborns are far more rare than Mistings. So Kelsier is basically the only other Mistborn that we meet. And he leads a thieving crew, and he finds Vin, discovers she's a Mistborn, and she's like, hey, like, join my crew. We're going to take down the Emperor. And then it's like there's like the whole mentor mentee story between Vin and Kelsier. There's the whole Ocean's 11 plot line. There's the whole taking down the Emperor plot line, and then there's a whole like intertwined with all of that is a really nice, genuine character arcs. And like Kelsier was my favorite character. I don't know how you feel.
I enjoyed Kelsier. I leaned more to Vin only because I did understand a lot where she was coming from and her whole her building up to trust everyone else.
Right.
Because Kelsier, well, why do you like Kelsier? Like I probably understand. I probably can guess why.
Yeah, I mean, like, so Vin, like most people like lean towards Vin as their favorite character. For me, Kelsier was my favorite character because he was a guy who was so charming, and he was a charming and dashing rogue. And he was really funny, but also like he had experienced genuine loss, and he's trying to make sure that his mind isn't muddled by revenge, and he wants the world to be a better place, and he's trying to be basically like, we are doing this to save the world. It is not for selfish motivations. Da da da. But his character arc is fantastic, but it's like once he reaches his arc. Once he reaches the catharsis of his arc, it's so sad what happens next. I mean, like I said, he's the mentor, and guess what happens, guys? I'm not gonna say it for spoiler reasons, but I'm sure you guys can pick it up.
You did say it was A New Hope.
But like the way Brandon Sanderson writes it and creates the characters and the world and the plot and how they all intertwine and help each other out. It is all so fantastically well done. And then like when those dramatic moments hit, they hit really, really hard. And the ending was so satisfying. How did you feel about the ending?
Like I told you, the ending, it hit me by surprise because I was like, oh, okay, so we're going to take like a few chapters to kind of process what happened, because there's a huge plot, like not plot twist, but like a shocking moment
Mm-hmm.
and just kind of like, okay, so they're gonna like reel from this, kind of like have to go off and like kind of recuperate. But they don't. But then the next chapter is like, no, no, we're going into the ending. Like this is it. Like we're going to the final. I'm like, whoa, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I enjoyed the fact that that plot twist of who the villain really is
Mm-hmm.
and kind of how they beat him was interesting because it's like this whole time you see him and you're like wondering, is he actually a god? And then the reveal of how his power works is like, okay, that makes sense, and it's not like too crazy of a thing. Because I remember, because one of the things I read, the like, you know how they have a summary at the back of books or whatever.
Right.
So like the whole thing is like supposed to be like, what if the prophesied hero failed to defeat the Dark Lord?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh well, technically,
So I've been watching a lot of Brandon Sanderson's writing advice and and lectures on writing.
mm-hmm.
That's kind of like how what really started pushing me towards Mistborn, because he kept referencing Mistborn in his class.
Yeah,
So it was like, I guess like I'll read it, and yeah. So if you watch Brandon Sanderson's class on writing and you haven't read Mistborn yet, highly recommend reading Mistborn. It is everything in that class put into practice to show that it works.
what of the characters did like the not the main characters we discussed our difference between Vin and Kelsier, but of more the secondary characters did you enjoy
Mm-hmm.
throughout this book?
I really liked Breeze and
Mm-hmm.
Elen. Elen surprised me how much I liked him.
Yeah, I enjoyed him because I was like, when you first introduced him, you're kind of like, really? Okay, this kind of is kind of a jerk.
Mm-hmm.
But as it goes along, you start to like him a little bit more.
Sympathize.
Yeah, which I'm like, okay, so he's supposed to be that whole. Well, not everyone in this world is an evil person, which I
Mm-hmm.
appreciate. I think I can agree with some of the like. Breeze, not I. It wasn't one of my favorite. I preferred Ham, which is basically the opposite of Breeze.
Yeah.
So I was like, Ham, I thought was much more fun, and also like Sazed. I can't. I don't know how to
Sazed.
say it. I don't know how to pronounce some of their names.
Yeah, I really like Sazed.
Yeah, he was just his power is much more is also interesting to me how
Mm-hmm.
it works.
Yeah, because
Uh,
it's a completely different magic system, which we will leave it to you guys to read the books to figure out what that one is.
yeah, to try and explain that is chaos.
That is
But
another lecture.
yeah, no, but I enjoyed his character. I enjoyed Ham only because he walks in. It's like, oh, here's this big, strong dude. Like he's obviously gonna be kind of like the muscle, but kind of like, hey, I just hit stuff and go about my way.
Mhm.
But no, he's like, I'm gonna be philosophical and like question everything about the world.
Philosophical in the funniest way possible.
Right? It's like, hey, do you really think this is all right? Are we technically doing the right thing? Technically, we're destabilizing the economy by thieving, and they're all like, dude, shut up.
Technically, we're killing God. What does
Right.
that make us?
And they're like, we don't want to think about the existential plot here. Just do your thing.
hmm
Which
Right.
I mean,
Oh man, but oh dude, but like with Elend, like I really liked him, and then at the end, I was really happy, for him and Vin. I'm not
yeah,
gonna. I've said too much. That's a spoiler.
that is a spoiler.
But dude, I was so happy at the end.
Yeah, I was. I expected so many more. I expected a whole lot of like just heartbreak at the end, which
Mm-hmm.
some characters are like revealed. Hey, it's not as bad as you thought it was, and others is like, yeah, no, it's over.
Mm-hmm.
But I did enjoy kind of the ending was much more surprising to me how it all turns out because I expected a completely different type ending
Mm-hmm.
based
A
on how
cliffhanger.
yeah
For the next book.
basically. And this book, like, it ends in a way that you don't need to have a series for. Like, if I didn't have the other two books, I would not realize that this was a series because it
Right.
kind of just ends at a perfect moment. Like, just a perfect moment. It's like everything's left up in the air. You can make your own conclusions of how the world goes on from there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of some of the books I kind of like because, like, I enjoy every good series, but a book that can just like end and you don't have to go anywhere from that. Like you can make your own conclusions to how it goes. I
Mhm.
enjoy that as well.
Yeah, so Brandon, when he talked about Mistborn in one of his lectures or maybe even the podcast, writing excuses, He talked about like when his idea with Mistborn was like, what if we had like what epic fantasies usually do in a whole trilogy, but all in one book instead? Then like, what happens after? What's the story after that? So, and that's what creates the rest of Mistborn's 2 and 3. Ryan, did you know that there's more to Mistborn than just those 3 books?
Yeah, I saw there was like 6 of them now, and I was like,
Yeah.
wait, what?
Yeah, so the first 3 takes place in like that epic fantasy, high fantasy setting, and then there's a 300-year gap, and then the next book 4 takes place is about different characters in like a steampunk setting.
Okay, I didn't know it was a 300-year gap. I just knew, I was like, I thought they were gonna be like, oh yeah, we're dealing with the main characters like children now. I was like, oh no, that's a
No,
large...
they're not. I don't think they're related. I haven't read them. My sister has read them. My sister read them so fast.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, she read the trilogy in a week. And then
Jeez.
now she's reading she read the 4th book recently, and then she's gonna be reading the 5th book soon. They're called Mistborn eras, as what Brandon Sanderson kind of pens them as. So the first 3 is about Vin, and it's era 1. So then the second one is Wayne and Wax era 2, and there's 2 more eras after that. But the second era has another book that still needs to be written, which he'll be planning to write sometime next year, I think. According to what he said on his website. I don't know. I act like I'm such a huge Brandon Sanderson super fan that I know exactly where these things are. But it's like, no, I actually just started reading Brandon Sanderson this year, and I'm just absorbing all the knowledge on his website and his lectures, because he has a lot of writing advice. Like he teaches writing at a university, and then he also has a writing podcast called Writing Excuses, that he's been doing for like 15 years. So there's 15 seasons of that to go through.
Oh, dang.
Yeah. But his writing advice is great. If you guys are wanting to learn how to write, highly recommend his class.
I'd say so.
It's on YouTube. It's
does
free.
a good job.
So, Mistborn, what would you give it, Ryan, out of 5 stars?
Out of 5 stars, I'd give it a good 4. Yeah, a good 4.
A good 4 out of 5? I give a solid 5 out of 5.
5 out of 5?
Yeah, it's not entirely my thing, because for the reasons like I said, reasons I said, but it is really well crafted and the ending is so satisfying.
Yeah.
So it's just like it's such a really satisfying reading experience.
The only reason,
so whether you're reading it for escapism or learning how to write, like you really can't go wrong with Mistborn.
Yeah, the only reason I say 4 out of 5, maybe 4.5, but it's because it has a few slow bits where I was kind of like, I don't care about this. Send me back to stop bringing, because it does drag a bit, and there are points where it's like they kind of are repetitive to me. It seems
a little bit. I really enjoy slower moments, especially like because Brandon Sanderson understands like, okay, every scene needs to have conflict, and the character needs to have a goal, so on and so forth. So like as long as that stuff happens, I'm totally cool with reading slower scenes, and I actually really enjoy those.
Okay, yeah, it was only a few of those where I was kind of like, let me finish this chapter so I can get to the next thing, because I did want to learn a little bit more about the lore, which they don't explore everything in this book, but
I'm sure there's more world building going on in the next few.
But overall, definitely recommend.
So we only have 15 minutes left, Ryan.
Wow, we are talking a lot.
Right. Maybe we'll save Stormfront for the next episode. How do you feel about that?
I'm fine with that. That can work.
Yeah. But Zach might be interested in Stormfront too, so we can talk about it with him as well.
Yeah. We spent much more time on the Rick Riordan stuff than we expected to.
Look, man, we just have a lot of feelings about Rick Riordan.
It's a good set of books, but they also have flaws.
Yeah. I don't know. We'll talk more about that, especially like as I'm reading the series to my brother, who's really liking Lightning Thief so far. So we'll see how that goes. Which brother is this? My 9-year-old brother. He's he's gonna be 10 soon.
Okay.
But right now, Ryan and I are gonna commit to something that we both agreed on. Is we're gonna pick a book for each other, but after answering a few questions.
Yes.
So the requirements of picking the next book for the other person were that it must be a standalone, or at least operate like a standalone. So like we said, Mistborn works as a standalone book. Even though it's part of a series, that still counts.
Mm-hmm.
You can pick like any Sherlock Holmes or Hercule Poirot book, and like that counts as a standalone book because none of those entries are really connected with each other.
Right. They don't
I would
require
argue-
you to read the other books.
Right. I would argue that a few Dresden Files books like work fine as a standalone because it kind of each book kind of reintroduces everything. But we'll talk more about that in the next episode. So the book must be under 500 pages. Graphic novels are included, but only volume ones or
Yeah.
like miniseries.
Or if it's like a special event, I guess.
Exactly. Like, as long as you're able to like read it as a standalone, it's totally fine. And obviously, the person recommending the book has to have read the book before.
Right.
So I've got a list of questions that we'll both answer, but I'm gonna start with you, Ryan. So when you read a book, or what book are you kind of searching for next? Like, are you looking for a first person or a third person narrative?
I do like first person only because I feel like it's more personal, I guess. Because like sometimes the character will talk to you, like they do in Percy Jackson and how they've done Dresden Files. I feel like there's more room for like comedy and like just I don't know personal feeling between you and the character. You can see more into their eyes. Whereas in third person, it's kind of like they did this, they did this, they did this, and it's more like I'm watching more of a movie than I am watching myself do it.
Okay, let me just cross off every third person book that I wrote on my list. Let's see. That's first person. That's first person. Most of what I wrote what I wrote down was first person.
I mean, I'll take that. I'll take a third person if you want to.
No. I got a lot of first person as well.
All right.
No, like I said, I have a lot of first person, so I only have to cross out a few for third person. There we go. Yeah, that one. Cool. Got it. So, as for me, I love first person narrative.
Okay.
For the same reason, because that it feels more personal. When it's done really well, the narrator feels like a character, and you're able to get in their headspace more. When it comes to third person, like I'll still read third person. Like I read whatever's put in front of me essentially. But third person tends to get really dry because a lot of authors don't know how to really personify a character.
Right.
So that way you're just reading about events that happen, which is, sometimes it works really well. Like Brandon Sanderson with Mistborn, that's a really tight third person narration where it's almost first person. But it's just, it's just in third person, like normal epic fantasy. So that's the big difference between my novel and Mistborn. Mine's first person.
Right.
We're gonna talk. I'll talk about more about that eventually, when it's closer to being done. Right now I'm on the second draft, but yeah. So first person is my way to go. I love how like you said, the narrator interacts with the reader. It's easier to get absorbed into it, especially if the narrator is kind of funny.
Okay.
So are you looking for a book that is longer or shorter?
Does medium work? I don't know. It's like
I mean, if you don't have a preference, then that's totally fine.
I really don't have a preference.
500 pages.
I really don't have a preference when it comes to longer or shorter books. I'm like, if it's long, as long as short is short, as long as the story's good.
Right. Me personally, I prefer longer books because it's just everything gets more fleshed out. As long as something interesting is happening, as long as we got that narrative drama happening.
Right.
Are you expecting something more comedic or more serious in tone?
I like a little bit of comedy to my books only because it keeps the story fresh and it keeps it a little bit more fun. Like serious is all good, but like there's a point where that just drags you down.
Right. So let me cross off the serious stuff.
Oh no! How much of this book list am I narrowing down?
I mean it's like a game of Guess Who.
Okay.
So it's like whenever it's like, oh, okay, so this isn't working, so I'm gonna cross this out. So I'm gonna still by the end I'm gonna have at least one book standing.
Okay.
For you. Okay, so that looks good. Yeah. Cool. As for me, I do also like to have a nice comedic tone, but like it's something where it's like it's fine. I love comedy. comedy is what I mostly write. However, I would love the character arcs to be serious, where the characters actually learn something and like like obvious like it feels like the metaphorical ball drops, or the bass drops. What is it? What? um, but yeah. So comedy, like Percy Jackson narration, or
Yeah.
even like Harry Dresden narration. But it's like the world is serious, but like the character narrator is very funny.
Okay.
Are there any themes of interest for you?
Define themes.
Like talking about racism, or like learning, like a character learning to be a learning to be a more responsible person, or like what kind of like the lessons that the characters learn.
I do like stories where the character kind of starts from, I guess you could say, the bottom. Now we're here,
Mm-hmm.
but like it's them learning to have to, I guess, accept themselves and not be just normal. It's
Right.
like
So kind of like a rags to riches, or
yeah, basically,
like a metaphorical rags to riches.
yeah.
Well, there goes that Spider-Man novel.
Ah,
I'm sorry, Ryan.
what do you mean? Spider-Man is poor ish.
Yeah, but it's not a rags to riches story.
Yeah, you're right.
But we are nearing a book that I talked about in this episode.
Oh dear.
That book is still standing very well.
Is it Alcatraz?
It is Alcatraz, but there's
I
still a
figured
couple
as
other
much.
options that we can go. I can still cross off.
Okay.
That one's going. That one's going. We're pretty close.
I figured.
Right. As for me, themes of interest, like I always like it when a character learns to just be my favorite theme, my favorite character arc is the protagonist realizing they're the bad guy.
Hmm.
I don't know if you have any books to recommend with that, but that's because Infinity Train season 3, they do it really well, where there's this group of people that are on this train that are basically just being reckless with it, and like they don't see the people who were born on the train as people, and so they can just like treat them like trash or even murder them.
Sounds a little bit like Snowpiercer in a way.
Yeah, it's yeah. There's a huge difference between Infinity Train and Snowpiercer,
obviously.
but yeah, but highly recommend Infinity Train if you haven't seen it.
Okay.
But yeah, but it's basically that season is about terrorists realizing they are the bad guys.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's such a fantastic arc in that season, and and I really like. I'm trying to think if I read it in the book at all. I want to say I have. No, I don't think I have. I don't think I've read it in the book at all. It's definitely like I've seen it floating around. Well, I mean, Dresden kind of does it sometimes, where he's kind of a jerk, but in the earlier books, when he realizes like, maybe I shouldn't be a jerk anymore.
Right.
That's what I was hoping from Magnus Chase, but well,
yeah, you don't get that.
But I know that's like one of the reasons why I'm interested in playing Persona 5, because I hear that's the arc of Persona 5, but I also hear it doesn't do it very well, except for like in Royals it does.
If you want to like like realizing they're a villain, I'll say it does it does do it better in Royals.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give it that. But like you realize you're the villain, but you also kind of realize you have heroic tendencies. But yeah, you're definitely not technically the hero.
Oh, I did kind of read it in the book, High Fidelity. It's where like this guy who's a jerk realizes like, oh wait, I'm the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, just kind of like him learning to recognize toxic masculinity and overcoming that in a sense.
Right.
But yeah, but like I find it's like it's one of those things where like you learn I feel like you can learn the best lessons from the worst characters. So you just kind of like you learn what it means to be human by a guy realizing, oh wait, I'm wrong.
Right.
But maybe I shouldn't be wrong anymore. So, what is your favorite genre?
I do like fantasy and sci-fi. Those are the ones I typically get, and I also like a good mystery novel as well.
Okay. Oh man, dude, my novel might be perfect for you. But so if you had to choose between fantasy or sci-fi, which of the two?
I would probably go fantasy, only because I
Gotcha.
do like a little bit more magic in my series than I do sci-fi.
Okay, we're gonna cross this off and. Oh man. Okay, so I wait. No, wait. Nope, that's getting crossed off too. Ryan, I only have one book standing.
Oh no, what is it?
It's Alcatraz versus the Evil Librarians by
I
Brandon
figured
Sanderson.
it was.
It's you said it's been a while since you read it.
Yeah,
It works as a standalone.
might as
It's
well
really
finish
short.
it.
You might as well finish it. So do you want me to keep answering questions?
I mean, we might as well if we want to fill up time. I mean, as I told you before we started the show, I can't find my list at the moment, so I can't give you my cross out at the moment. But
Okay,
I can give it to you later.
Do
and
you,
we
do
can
you
discuss
just want
in
to
the next
like
episode.
pull a book out of thin air and recommend it to me, and we'll see how that goes?
I mean, I can, yeah. It might not fit all your criteria, but
I mean, it doesn't have to, but like somewhere around there. But
yeah.
lay it on me. What is it?
The closest thing I've come to is either Ender's Game. I think you've read that.
I've read Ender's Game, yeah.
Okay, so I will drop that then.
Oh, that is another one where it's like the characters realize they're the bad guys.
Yeah. Another one where they realize they're bad guy, because some of them I haven't read many where they realize they're bad guy. Otherwise, I would be reading those more.
I was just talking about Ender's Game recently with a friend. It was like, but yeah, it's not so much as the characters realizing they're the bad guys, but it's sort of like they're put in through simulations to train for war. But then like it's revealed like actually that was all real and you were you just committed genocide.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
It really messed me up when I first read that as a kid. I was like, oh, this is awful.
Yeah. I still need to read more. I need to read the second book, Speaker of the Dead, because I hear that one's even better than Ender's Game.
I haven't been able to find it.
Too bad Orson Scott Card is a terrible person.
Yeah.
If his books are good, buy them used.
Yes. Do not give him more money.
Right. So what else you got for me?
Another one I have was Dorothy Must Die.
Okay, I haven't read that one. I've heard good things about it.
Yeah. And also, which kind of goes into that Dorothy Must Die theme, is also Wicked. It's not the musical.
Yeah, the novel that it's based on?
Yeah. I think that might be more than 500 pages, though.
You know what? Let me look that up real quick on Goodreads. Let's say there's like one edition that's like 500, less than 500 pages, but the rest are like 700. Like, Ryan, you found a loophole. All right, Goodreads.com. You can follow me on Goodreads. I write reviews there pretty often.
Yeah, they are good reviews.
I try to finish a book every 10 days. I don't always meet that deadline, but it's kind of averages out to that. Wicked. I know I can probably get that for like free too.
Yeah.
Through the library
I
system.
have that sitting
by Gregory Maguire.
Yep, I have it sitting in my room.
It is 406 pages for the default edition. So, any others you want to recommend? So we can just kind of toss a coin.
This one won't fit some of your criteria, but I'm just only recommending it because it's my favorite book from when I was younger. Mysterious Benedict Society. Okay,
actually, my brother has a copy of that.
Yeah, that book series was what I grew up with. Just to give you a slight synopsis of it, the only reason it's special to me is because most of the characters have not disabilities, but like, I guess like social disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
And so that resonated a lot with me, who has his own growing up. So I was like, I like this. So I only recommend that. It has comedic in nature. It is longer, but it does not have protagonists realizing they're the bad guy or first person.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But
well, so we got 3 books. I just pulled up a random number generator.
Okay.
Do we want to? Are you cool if I do it this way?
Yeah, that's fine. It's like so. Our 3 books are what? Wicked.
Dorothy Must Die, Wicked, and Mysterious Benedict Society in that order. So number between 1 and 3. Give me number 3. Mysterious Benedict Society. It is.
All right, and I'll be reading
the one that you said that's like most outside the criteria.
Right.
All right. No, I'll read it. My brother, like I said, my brother has a copy, so
Yeah.
I can just pick it up as soon as I finish Magnus Chase.
And I will grab my copy of Alcatraz that is hidden deep within my bookshelf.
Is
'Cause
that is that the one that was published by Scholastic
I believe so.
with the old cover?
Yeah, the one with like there's a dinosaur on the front.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So okay.
Should I
so there's
not
a
read that one?
No, you can. I don't think there's anything different with the new edition. So, but a brief history on that though. So it was originally published by Scholastic, one book at a time, for a planned 5-book series. However, Scholastic stopped publishing it after the 4th book.
Ah.
Yeah, so there was still one more book planned
Yeah,
that Brandon had, but he couldn't publish. So he had to wait like 4 years before he can finally buy the rights from Scholastic and then sell them back to Tor. And then Tor came out with the new hardcover illustrated editions
Mm-hmm.
for the series. And then I think it's book 4 that actually has like a joke in it that's not in the original printing with Scholastic, because it talks about because it basically pokes fun at the Scholastic cover of book 2. But I think book 1 there's no real changes in it. But if you find yourself with extra cash, highly recommend the hardcover editions. They got cool illustrations, and book 5 is really good, and is only available in that edition. But book 5 gets really dark. I'm just gonna say that right now. People complain how dark it gets. So my theory is that Scholastic didn't want to publish book 5 because of how dark it got for a middle grade series.
Okay, yeah, because I'm looking at the new cover now, and I'm like, this is much more, I don't know, fantasy like than what I remember being.
It fits the tone much better.
Yeah, it definitely does. Then because I'm looking at the old cover and I'm like, yeah, I can see why I was like I stopped for a second.
Well, it's like I was thinking I was thinking about it earlier today actually. Like, what if Scholastic just thought like Alcatraz was going to be the next like Captain Underpants or something because it was funny, and then later on they realized, oh, he wants to tell a serious story.
Right.
We can't publish that.
That's it's sad.
Yeah, but hey, he got it back. Now we have the director's cuts
Right.
of them with illustrations.
How much time do we have left?
We have -5 minutes.
Oh, never mind then. I won't bring this up then.
Do you want to have any final words, Ryan?
I'm going to look forward to reading Alcatraz finally for the first time since I was a young boy.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
It's good.
From what you've said from this entire like discussion, I am excited to read it. Brandon Sanderson has already got me once, so he might as well get me twice.
Yep. My final word is rutabaga. Have fun with that reference, Brandon Sanderson fans.
Ha ha ha.
So you can follow us on Twitter at committed crits, COMMITTEDCRITS. You can support us on Patreon at the link below. You can follow us on YouTube as well at youtube.com/KFM Studios. So we'll be uploading the podcast there in video form as well, without our faces, unfortunately. Maybe once the pandemic is over and maybe we live together, that'll be the day.
Willing.
See ya in 2 weeks.
Adios.